Good morning, guys, or afternoon, actually. I guess it is. Everything new under the sun. I want to take a look at today dinosaurs in the Bible, and more specifically, recent sightings of dinosaurs. Are dinosaurs alive today? Let's take a look at it from a biblical point of view. Do they exist? And were they with man, etc.? There's lots of questions surrounding dinosaurs. But what interested me in it was a recent number of videos that Kent Hovind has been doing. I think the last 4 or 5 have been related to basically all the extra information he has about dinosaurs living now on this earth as we speak, and sightings in the last 100 years. And there's all kinds of them. And the further you go back in history, the more stories of sea creatures and sea serpents and dragons, etc., there are in the history books. And of course, evolutionists, etc., put this off as people were crazy in the past and made up stories in the past, and everybody who's witnessed Loch Ness is crazy. The 11,000 people who have witnessed Loch Ness, Nessie, they're all crazy. They're all lying. They've all seen just a log floating in Loch Ness waters, etc. And so they're all lying, and so they all write them off. But there's been, thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of sightings of various sorts of creatures. And interestingly, Kent Hovind let at the nugget that one of his friends apparently has found a pterodactyl in Arizona, in the state of Arizona, United States. And that's interesting. And there's looking to be a big reveal, and they're apparently putting it in a cage and going to put it on display or something like that. So we'll see what comes of that. But I just quickly did a search for recent sightings of dinosaurs, and I've come across some, I think, what are pretty interesting stuff. Now, this is by no means exhaustive. Definitely go search it out yourself. The thing is, there's too many articles, there's too many stories, there's too many people, eyewitnesses, saying that they have seen dinosaurs. But of course, we've all been brought up to believe that dinosaurs died out millions of years ago by an asteroid strike, which apparently killed off just the dinosaurs and no other large living creatures. It just made the dinosaurs go extinct, which is not believable at all. The Bible says something far more simple. The Bible says that man lived with dinosaurs, and dinosaurs were on the earth living with us. And basically, why we don't see them anymore, or don't see them often, is because they were big and bothersome. And man has mostly killed them off, like man has mostly killed off the buffalo and the fox in cities, etc. That's why you don't see predators in cities or where a land, where a location is very populated, like Europe, for example. Southern Europe and Britain. These are places where people have been and hunted for thousands of years, and so any big animal has been hunted to extinction, just like the buffalo for a large part of North America. So let's quickly see. I just want to take a look at some of the resources out there that you can search for yourself and get information about it. So this is an article from ChristianAnswers.net. So where does it speak of dinosaurs in the Bible? Well, it says, dinosaur-like creatures are mentioned in the Bible. The Bible uses ancient names like behemoth and tannin. Behemoth means kingly, gigantic beasts. Tannin is a term which includes dragon-like animals and the great sea creatures such as whales, giant squids, marine reptiles like plesiosaurs that may become extinct. Now, there's been lots of plesiosaur sightings. There was a story of the Japanese trawler that dragged up some big skeleton that looks like a big plesiosaur. There's lots of evidence that there's still plesiosaurs out there and sea serpents that were told by the sailors, sunk sailing ships 100 years ago. There's all sorts of stories about that. Fascinating Wikipedia article on all the supposed sea creatures and dinosaurs all around, like Loch Ness. The Bible's best description of a dinosaur-like animal is recorded in Job, and this is kind of the chapter that most refer to. In chapter 40, look at the behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength he has in his loins. And the image at the top there is of a dinosaur, of course, and of course the smaller animals are the elephant and the hippopotamus. And many people say, the creature it's speaking of in Job is either an elephant or a hippopotamus. But there's specific reasons why it can't be, and the main one is the description of the tail, basically. It says, what strength he has in his loins. That's the belly, and you see the brown-colored tail on the belly there, pointing out what he's speaking of, basically. What power in the muscles of his belly. His tail sways like a cedar, and of course an elephant has a tiny tail, so does a hippopotamus, tiny tails on them. The sinews of his thighs are close-knit. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like rods of iron. He ranks first among the works of God. That's Job 40. The book of Job is very old, probably written about 2,000 years before Jesus was born, so about 4,000 years ago, our time. Here God describes a great king of the land animal, like some of the biggest dinosaurs, the Diplodocus and the Apatosaurus. It was gigantic plant eater with great muscles and very strong bones. The behemoth were not afraid. They weren't afraid of man. They did not need to be. They were huge. Their tails were so long and strong that God compared them to cedars, one of the largest and most spectacular trees in the ancient world. After all, the behemoth had died out. Many people forgot them. Dinosaurs were extinct, and fossil skeletons that are in museums today did not begin to be put together until about 150 years ago. That's when man forgot that they were alive, basically, although there were still sightings happening. But after that time, the people started being taught that dinosaurs became extinct, 60 million years ago, or whatever the date is now. But indeed, the Bible does speak of these. I want to take a look at this is Wikipedia here that you're looking at. You can go to Wikipedia, list of reported lake monsters. So these could be plesiosaurs or some other dinosaurs, but there's just a ton of them. So you've got the flags here, so you can see the U.S., Canada, United States, Lake Thunderbird, Lake Titiaskung, Ballston Lake. These are all animals that they say are big, huge lake monsters. Ogopogo, the serpent, Old Greenie, Oklahoma octopus, Big Tim, Manipogo, Thetis lake monster, Ippopogo, that's in Lake Simcoe, Ontario, Canada. That's actually very, very close to where I grew up. And these are sightings that you can go search for these on Wikipedia. I'll put all the links in the description if I can. But there's just a ton of them. Lake Pepin in Minnesota, Lake Ontario, a couple of apparently lake monsters in Lake Ontario there. 2 listings for that. A ton of listings in the United States. Vermont, New York, Idaho, Utah, Pennsylvania. Now we have sightings in Costa Rica, Argentina, Cameroon, in the Congo. All these examples of monsters. Mokole Mbembe, that's in Cameroon. That's where we're going to talk a bit about that one. These are creatures that in Cameroon and Congo that the indigenous people say they have seen, and they even hunt, because they, if they don't hunt them, if they don't kill them, they actually kill their dogs and kill their children, etc. They're fearsome animals. You also think about the Native Americans who have the idea of the thunderbird at the top of their totem pole, and these are massive quote-unquote prehistoric animals like the pterodactyl and such that are still alive today, and if not alive today in the U.S., then alive recently enough that the indigenous have legends of them. This goes on. Europe, Norway, Sweden, Russia, legends in Russia, but the Brosno dragon, that's in Brosno Lake. And again, it doesn't have the date of these, but they're all over the place. Serpent-like creatures, it goes on and on here. Thailand, Asia, Australia. There's all sorts of, in Japan even, there's also sorts of areas around the world that are uninhabited by humans, and only have photos taken of them by the satellites, by Google Earth technology, effectively. So there's all sorts of areas where God could preserve his animals. Now, he doesn't need to, but I think it would be neat if God didn't let these animals go completely extinct, and that there's actually a kind of each of these animals somewhere. And even if there's no large dinosaurs, if you look at any small lizard. You can go to the PetSmart store today, the pet store today, whatever your pet store is called, and you can purchase lizards which have like 3 little horns on their head. Is that the Triceratops? Remember that reptiles never stop growing. So if you give them 200, 400, 600 years to grow without humans killing them, you have the dinosaurs. You just look at recent stories of the size of alligators and crocodiles in Florida. As long as man doesn't interfere, they get massive, 18, 20 foot long crocodiles in Florida, in the swamps of Florida. And there's a massive swamp in the Congo, which borders with Cameroon, which is apparently the size of, a couple of states in the U.S. It's a massive swamp where no one lives because it's all swampy. And there's stories, modern day stories of dinosaurs living in that swamp, like today in 2018. So I want to take a look at a couple of articles here. This is one from January 12, 2018. This is from charlottestories.com, Charlotte, North Carolina. Flying dinosaur sightings are on the rise in North Carolina. This is 2018. Look at the date there. Look at the date, January 12th, 2018. If you didn't think we were living in biblical times, boy, this is a neat article to look at and say, wow, God is great. And it is possible that there are indeed creatures that the history, or that the textbooks say are millions of years old, that the evolutionists say are millions of years old. In fact, they're still with us. And like I say, wouldn't it be interesting if God actually preserved kinds of each of these animals for the millennial reign of Christ, where they're going to be allowed to prosper again and get real big like God intended it when he created the world 6,000 years ago. Wouldn't that be neat? Now he could bring them back from the dust as well. He could recreate them. But I think God is a good God, and he's more creative than that, if you will. And he's gonna wow us and actually preserve them through this. And I think there are lots of valid examples of actual dinosaurs alive today. So this is known as cryptozoology, the study of hidden creatures, basically. So North Carolina has been long home to legends of Bigfoot and the Lake Norman monster and lizardmen. But recently there's been a growing belief of modern pterosaurs living in North Carolina. Now this is kind of like the story of what I was saying, where Kent Hovind said one of his friends apparently has found some pterodactyls that he's going to capture. So pterodactyls are basically flying dinosaurs that have skin-like wings, kind of like the skin of on a bat, but aren't furry like a bat and aren't in the bat kind. And that's what the image there on the article shows you. Let me see if I can. It doesn't make it any bigger. I'll go to reader mode here. Cryptozoologist Jonathan Whitcomb sent out a press release about the creatures, including new pterodactyl sightings. That's right, pterodactyl sightings in North Carolina in 2018. This is an article from 2018. I mean, my mind is being blown. I'm so excited when I see this stuff. I think this is credible. When they do finally release real images of these creatures, of course, evolutionists are going to say either it's a hoax, or they're going to say, oh, it's amazing, one survived for 60 million years, or however millions of years it is. When indeed, all the Bible says is about 6,000 years ago, man lived with dinosaurs. They've been living with dinosaurs all along, and there's dinosaurs likely today. The Bible doesn't say that there's dinosaurs today, but it's only been 6,000 years since the creation of the world, and dinosaurs have been recorded in the history books in legend and indigenous history, up until the last couple hundred of years, and even more sightings than that have come out after that, of course. But we, with our modern technological scientific minds, have never given any of these stories legs to so that someone could actually verify them, because of course with evolution it has to be wrong, because these things were alive millions and millions of years ago, so they couldn't possibly be here now. Well, I think these articles illustrate a different picture. So this article goes on. He commented, my associates and I believe that there are non-extinct pterosaurs, what many persons would call pterodactyls or flying dinosaurs. Cynthia Lee has been studying to become a veterinary technician, reported to Whitcomb an apparent pterosaur that she saw on Thursday, January 4th, 2018 in Raleigh. She was sure that the flying creature had no feathers, but it did have a long tail with diamond-shaped bulb at the end of it. And this is stories that I've heard similar with the diamond-shaped tail that I've heard from some of the stories that Kent Hovind was speaking of about the Arizona capture, etc. It also had a head crest. She also spotted the creature last week following Wednesday's snow. Lee was taking an Uber ride to work when she saw the same crested creature out the window. The driver did not see it. Her recent sightings in Raleigh weren't the first occasions someone in Cynthia's family had seen an apparent pterosaur. She told Whitcomb about a sighting many years earlier. My mother and uncle saw one too while they were playing outside of my grandma's house when they were really little, it says. They told Grandma, but she didn't believe it. I thought they were extinct. And that's what we're all being indoctrinated to think, that all these dinosaur creatures are extinct, when in fact, actually, the people are telling otherwise with eyewitness testimony that they're seeing and experiencing and killing these dinosaurs, for example, in Congo. So there's lots of sightings here. Here's, look at the purple areas. These are where there are 9+ reported sightings of living pterosaurs. The blue states are where there's 6 to 8+ sightings of living pterosaurs. The light blue is the 4 to 5 sightings of living pterosaurs. This was updated January 4th, 2018, this year. Incredible. Matt Cartmill, professor emeritus of evolutionary anthropology at Duke University, said, it's not impossible for there to be living pterosaurs today, but it is highly unlikely, he said. I can't believe that if there were living pterosaurs in North America, 3 centuries of naturalists, explorers, farmers, hunters, trappers, and biologists would never have run across a single specimen, living or dead. I'd rank it as being slightly more probable than living unicorns, which is, of course, he's making light of them, making a joke of it, in Raleigh and Durham, but only slightly, he says. I think that's inaccurate. I think there's a lot of people who have reported all sorts of things, but anytime a story comes up, they're either not going to say it because they're going to be called crazy because they've been taught to believe that dinosaurs were only around millions of years ago, and so they don't bring these stories out because no one's going to publish them. What newspaper is going to publish them outside of the Inquirer magazine, who people just write off as fake news anyways. But pretty interesting that there's people studying this still, and there's all sorts of reported sightings. Now, like I say, Kent Hovind apparently has a friend north of him. He's in Pensacola. Not Pensacola. He's in Alabama. I think it's the yellow state there above Florida. I could be wrong. I don't know my American geography. But he says he knows somebody who has apparently found a living pterodactyl in Arizona. So that should be interesting. I haven't heard any more of that. But these are recent sightings. This is coming out today in this day and age because of alternate news streams like YouTube, for example. Here is the Charlotte Observer, Charlotte, North Carolina. A dinosaur-like creature is reported on Lake Norman over the weekend. This is a picture. I think this is of Loch Ness. Yes, the body of the creature you can't see in the horizontal black area. His neck protrudes then up, directly up, and his head is cut off by the top of the image there in the black area. But that's a picture of Nessie. The latest in a sporadic series of monster sightings on Lake Norman has appeared on a website called cryptozoology.com. You can check this out. There's all sorts of interesting sightings there. Some real, some fake, maybe. But not everybody who sees these things are crazy. They've seen something. A 35-year-old Mecklenburg County man told Cryptozoology he spotted a dinosaur-like creature Saturday morning while traveling on a boat with friends. A man described this creature as splashing around in the water, 10 feet long and reminiscent of the mythical Loch Ness monster. It was visible for about a minute before dropping below the surface, he told the website. No photos were included on the July 10th article, which identified the source only as a local salesman. There's even a website called the Lake Norman Monster, so you can go to this and check it out. I'm just saying that there's sightings of these things. People see them, and of course, anytime anything's posted, they're just written off as, well, that guy's crazy because everybody knows they died off millions of years ago. Well, no, you have these eyewitness first-hand accounts of people seeing them. It is interesting that no one has yet to get a video of them, but I think people are so amazed, so wowed that it just blows their mind because they were taught to believe that these were had been extinct for millions of years. They don't get their cameras out. But I think it's pretty fascinating stuff. I'll put the link to all these here. This is from OurStrangePlanet.com. Modern dinosaurs. Why kids love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, those exotic reptilian creatures that ruled the Earth for 300 million years. I believe the Earth is only 6,000 years, and I think there's a lot of very excellent evidence for that. And it doesn't make sense that it's millions of years otherwise. Continue to mesmerize generations of earthbound kids, and count me among them, for I was hooked tooth and claw from the beginning. And that's where the whole millions of years is just assumed. It's just assumed that this is correct. Well, maybe the Earth is not millions of years old. Maybe indeed there's dinosaurs, and they still live with us, although there's not very many of them. Because man killed them up because they're threatening men, just like all the other grizzly bears, for example. There used to be bears on the island that I live, but there are no more because they hunted them to extinction on the island. So there's no more. They didn't live millions of years ago. They lived maybe 100 years ago, 50 years ago, until the people, the indigenous, and whomever else here shot the very last one. And that's what happened with the dinosaurs in most of the area. So this one starts to speak about the legends here, slaying the dragons. Here's an image of a soldier slaying a dinosaur of some sort. And this is all thought to be, just story and rhetoric and, the stuff that they made up, like the never-ending large fish that you caught on your fishing vacation. But these are, on the other hand, maybe true depictions of what these people were actually doing. Throughout the ancient and medieval world, there are tantalizing evidence of dragons and dinosaurian beasts influencing art and culture. Why would that be? That's because these creatures were alive, and they're just recording what they dealt with in their day and age. Roman mosaics feature dragon motifs. Viking ships were often adorned with dragon-headed bows, said to scare away sea monsters. Reptilian forms depicted in art and myths of ancient peoples are found around the globe, but myths and legends are one thing. What about actual documentation? See, they don't accept any documentation from the past because that's just myth and legend. So I don't know what historical source they would suggest is good enough for actual documentation. I would think the only actual documentation they want is something less than 20 years old, maybe, I assume. In 1572 AD, an Italian peasant claimed to have killed a dragon that had been preying upon his cattle. The dead creature was reportedly examined by famous naturalists of that era, Eusebius Aldrovandus, on May 13, 1572. He obtained the carcass, thoroughly examined it, and had the dragon-looking form mounted for display on a local museum. The medieval French town of Nurloc was supposedly named after the dragon slayer who dispatched a dragon-like beast, larger than an ox, that sported long, sharp horns. But again, even an animal examined by a naturalist, a skilled person in that day, who should know, the body, etc. This is being taken as a story because we don't believe it anymore. You have all these stories in 1883 of a Bolivian saurian, which is a Bolivian dinosaur existing. In 1907, a British army sent a survey to mark the border between Peru and Brazil and experienced dino sightings. So these are things 100 years ago, 150 years ago, all sorts of stories related to this. I'm not going to read all this, just to say that in the last 100 years, there's all sorts of stories of skilled people, intelligent people, trusted people sighting these, but they didn't have cameras. They didn't have digital cameras, of course. but all they did was write it down. And of course, all the evolutionists just write off everything that was ever written down in the last 100 years as, as they must have seen a hippopotamus or something like that. But I believe, indeed, there's pretty good evidence and recent evidence in the last 15 years, indeed, that there are sightings of dinosaurs, pterodactyls, and even plesiosaurs and other dinosaurs in the uninhabited areas of the Congo and Cameroon. Let's see, this is a story, this is from exemplar.com. Dinosaur sightings. Are dinosaurs still alive today in Africa? And this is all there's a long list of cryptozoology websites which delve into this and ask the question and say, what is up with these sightings? And thankfully they're not writing them off. But evolutionists do write them off because they say, well, it just can't happen. It must have been something else. This article says, it's interesting to wonder what the world would be like if there were dinosaurs still alive today. And I think there actually are. It might have been depressing news for a 10-year-old, but now for the most of us, surely realize that it's probably a good thing for humans that dinosaurs aren't around anymore, as if they're stating it as if it's fact. In fact, I think the sightings and the evidence that will be coming out, I think in the near future, is going to prove that we actually still live with dinosaurs. There's just not very many of them alive. In fact, if it wasn't for the calamity that occurred 65 million years ago, which caused the death of the dinosaurs, see, they're just writing it off as impossible. So any evidence to the contrary is written off here because we know that they died off 65 million years ago. The prevalent theory is that the impact of a large object zooming in from space caused a global disaster that killed off anything larger than a rabbit. My question would be, well, how do we get elephants and other animals, hippopotamuses, if everything larger than a rabbit was killed off? I guess you're going to say evolution, right? And they all evolved from rabbits since the asteroid struck. I guess that's what they would say. Incredible. Are dinosaurs alive today? Some cryptozoologists believe that there are dinosaurs living today in remote parts of the world. They're not talking about birds, and they don't mean crocodilians. They're talking about real, live dinosaurs. It's unclear how this could be possible. I think the Bible makes clear where the earth is only about 6,000 years old, and all through history, man has spoken of and had legend of dinosaurs and living beside dinosaurs. It says here, but the fact remains that local tribes in equatorial Africa know of large, frightening creatures living in the depths of the jungles, most of which we haven't explored yet. When researchers show the witnesses pictures of different animals, some living, some extinct, they routinely point to images of dinosaurs and claim that is what they saw. I encourage you to actually go in and just Google recent sightings of dinosaurs. I think the evidence is actually increasing in these last days that there are actually dinosaurs around, which is incredible to me. How could tribesmen know nothing of other animal species located on distant parts of their own continent, have knowledge of dinosaurs that existed 65 million years ago, unless they had recently seen one? Well, the answer is they didn't exist 65 million years. The Earth didn't exist 65 million years ago. It has only existed for the last about 6,000 years. It is possible that in very remote and largely unexplored sections of African jungles, a few dinosaur species managed, or is it possible, I guess they're asking, did they manage to avoid extinction? Some researchers think there could be many, quote, prehistoric, how can there be prehistory? That doesn't even make sense, animals around today. But even though there are prehistoric animals around today, they're not going to give up their idea of 65 million years because that is what their religion of evolution is based on. But if dinosaurs are still alive today, that would be another class of amazing altogether. Many expeditions have ventured into the Congo region searching for tangible evidence of these creatures, only to leave disappointed. But these creatures are well known to locals, and there is plenty of eyewitness testimony to go by. I'm just going to cover this one, which I think is the most interesting here. Mokele Mbembe may be the most famous of the African dinosaurs, thanks to some recent attention from shows like Destination Truth. It lives in the Congo River Basin, eats vegetation, but is extremely dangerous because of its territorial tendencies. It will attack humans if they come too close, and is known to kill hippos if they invade its territory. Despite numerous expeditions to locate the creature dating back over 200 years, it is yet to be officially documented by science. And again, I don't know what officially documented means, because lots of people have spotted it, written of it. So what exactly qualifies as being officially documented by science? I don't know. Does an evolutionist have to write a peer-reviewed evolutionary article for them to believe it? Because no creation is going to get an article peer-reviewed and accepted through evolutionary mainstream resource, lines, because the evolutionists can't accept that dinosaurs are alive today, because that would blow up the whole religion of evolution. Let's get rid of that. All these ads here. We don't need to see these ads. I wish I could go into reader mode here, but I can't. Witnesses describe Mokele Mbembe as having a large, heavy body like an elephant, but with a very long neck and tail. Some researchers, this sounds an awful lot, to some researchers, this sounds like an awful lot like a sauropod, a dinosaur. Sauropods grew to massive sizes, some possibly 200 feet in length, but even a small sauropod would be relatively huge compared to modern animals. Diplodocus is a type of sauropod many people are familiar with, and this or something like it, what locals are calling Mokele Mbembe, so some creature like effectively what you see there. And there's huge, thousands of square kilometers of area not explored on foot by humans, only taken photos of from satellites, for example, where these creatures could exist. And the resolution of the satellite imagery would not be enough to positively identify this. So there's large areas, large swaths of land, Congo, Cameroon, all around the world, on every continent probably, in Russia and Siberia. How much land is up there that people haven't explored? Northern Canada, how much land is up there that people haven't fully explored? Now, I'm not saying that there's a lot of dinosaurs, but the fact is, I believe there's a lot of sightings, thousands upon thousands of sightings of all sorts of dinosaur creatures. And is it possible that a few, could still be existing around the world? And I believe the answer is yes. I don't know how. They're still surviving. I believe that God, however, in his creative wisdom and power, I think he's preserving them and maybe even protecting them from man and not letting these stories get out, maybe, because he's going to allow them to survive through to the millennial reign of Christ, which we're not too far from. And maybe that's why sightings are starting to increase now as we get closer to the millennial reign of Christ, because he's going to have these animals on the other side, if you will, of the judgment that comes upon the earth. And like I say, he could grow these out of the dust of the earth. He made man out of the dust of the earth. He created them from nothing. So he could do that if he wanted to. But I think it would be more interesting if God actually preserved these animals through 6,000 years of man, didn't allow every single one of them to be killed. And so maybe there are some examples. And I think, actually, again, if you look at all the small lizards, reptiles never stop growing. So you give them a couple hundred years, those are your dinosaurs. So even if there's no large ones left, even if these stories of the large ones are gone, you have all these small lizards you can go down to your pet store and buy today in the year 2018. And if you could grow them for 200 years, they would become the size of a dinosaur. They are the dinosaurs. If you're looking for dinosaurs living today, look at the reptiles, the lizards that exist in your pet store. Go Google that. Check your science book. Reptiles never stop growing. Now, they do die after a while from various things because of the pollution of the world, etc., lack of proper food and nutrition and care, etc. But reptiles generally otherwise never stop growing. Their body never stops growing, even though they may die themselves. But again, if you give them 200 years in a proper environment, proper habitat, you have a dinosaur. So I think there's pterodactyls living today. There's this story. This article goes on to talk about a whole bunch of different animals that are spotted. Could dinosaurs be really living in Africa today? And, you know, it goes on. I'll put this link in the description as well. But anyways, guys, I just want to give you kind of a teaser. Check out the last, I don't know, 5, 6 videos that Ken Hovind has done. I think most of them are titled Lies in the Textbook, but the last 4 or 5, 6 of them have been about all the extra detail about dinosaurs living today in our day and age. And I think it's incredible. I think, to me, it's a wow moment. And it's a thing where I think, wow, God, you're awesome that these animals are likely even preserved today, and there's still examples of them. And it blows the evolutionary theory out of the water if dinosaurs exist today. So anyways, I'll leave it there, guys. I'll put the links in the description. Thanks for watching. This has been the Sunday video. Hope you appreciate it. Hope you find it interesting. And if I find some more content, I'll definitely bring it to you. But I think there's lots of evidence, and we should be seeing soon maybe photographic and video evidence of the pterodactyl. Dinosaurs did not go extinct 65 million years ago. We're living with them today. There's not very many left, but there are some big ones left, and there's lots of little ones all over the place. Go to your pet store and look at the lizards. Look at the reptiles there, and envision what they would look like if they were 100 times their size, 1,000 times their size, and if they lived for 200 years or 300 or 400 years. Think how big they might be. Incredible stuff, guys. I'll leave it there, and maybe I'll do another video about the reptiles and the lizards that you might find in your pet store. That could be an interesting one, and I just speculate on what types of dinosaurs they might be classified as if they got big. But anyways, guys, like I say, thanks for watching. And like the video, please share it. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.